Hi there, Frank Winston here for the Pacifica Historical Society and host of our weekly show, Footprints of Pacifica, where we discover and explore the lure and the lore of lovely Pacifica, its character and its characters. This show is a very special show because it's going to include reminiscences and memories from longtime residents talking about life in Pacifica. We have recorded several of them, and we hope you will enjoy them. Let's roll the tape.
And I remember no houses being built around and how they built up even around me, and I live on Santa Maria Avenue.
And I'm Ann Turner, and we moved here in '46. We didn't have electricity at the time, so we had to wait a couple of days before we could get electricity. So it was kind of fun. And pioneered a little bit. So that's it.
What part of Pacifica did you live in?
The old part, Sharp Park on 129 San Jose Avenue. Close to about a block from Little Brown Church. So we had lots of games. But it was, our children grew up here. Our daughter was 6 months old when she came.
And I moved here in June, and I didn't have a telephone until the following May.
Oh yes, telephones. See, we had a store at the corner of Clarendon Road and Francisco. It was like a grocery store. It was Peck's. Peck's was the name of it. And they had a telephone, but my family didn't have a telephone, and we lived about a half a block away, so we'd get our telephone messages there. It's wonderful. Something like that.
I don't think any of us had a phone because we didn't qualify at first. And you could either have 10 lines or 4. But somewhere we got the 4 lines, and you had another ring. When somebody else was.
You had four lines.
They must have had a switchboard here. They had a switchboard at Anderson's grocery store. Yep, Mrs. Anderson used to have a switchboard.
And the first person I met here was their daughter, Lorraine. She lived next door to me, and I was so glad because I didn't know a soul when I moved in.
Yeah, it was fun.
So it was nice. So we became good friends.
So what about mail? How often
We had to walk
mail?
every day. We had to walk to the post office.
And where was that?
Well, it's where the freeway is now.
Oh, okay. But there was one in this area.
Yes, there was one. Wolves were running it. Joe Russell Wolf and were the postmistresses.
Well, I was just telling her my dad got mail addressed to, his name was Alcide Bastolfi, Artichoke Ranch, Salada Beach, California. I'm going to mail one today and see what happens. Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
My property tax says Salada Beach on it.
Does it still say that? And then the Little Brown Church came later then?
No, it was here.
It was here too?
But they also, we went to our children, what was it, nurse? We didn't go in the city for the doctor. They had checkups at the church.
Oh, right here at Little Brown Church?
Oh, on Ocean Avenue. Oh, they had the Well Baby.
At the Well Baby Clinic.
Well Baby
had a Well
Clinic at the
Baby
church.
Clinic.
Yes, sir. It was nice at the Little Brown Church.
So I still don't understand the road. Where was the road you used to go to San Francisco?
It's where the freeway, part of the freeway.
Yeah, up behind Edgemont, and then it would wind up and around the hills like this. It was a very, very windy road. And there was a hog ranch right at the top. Yeah, okay. And then you went down into Homer.
Yeah. But it
So
was
up through that manor area.
So artichokes were pretty much, was there anything else like orchids or fuchsias or?
No.
Well, the Pendola family had a violet farm in Ballymar, and that's Nick's wife, her family, raised violets in Ballymore.
I know they don't take direct sun, so were there trees?
So how did fuchsia become
How did fuchsia become?
I don't know.
What, do you remember a lot of fuchsias around?
No, there wasn't.
Well, they said they grew wild, just like poinsettias grow in Santa Barbara, that fuchsias were all over the place.
We used to go in the hills when we were in school, pick poppies and lupins. The hills were just full of those. Oh, they were covered with. We had peas where the mortuary is in Pacifica. There was peas were raised there. And then
So there's really a lot of farming.
it was mostly farming.
It's really a farming community.
Fuchsia's on Old County Road. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh
Yeah, and
yes.
they raised them. They raised fuchsia. Well, she has a story too. What's your story about Mr. Sharp?
Oh,
the fuchsia?
below the castle, the house that's there. My husband had my husband terrace in the yard, and there was solid fuchsias up there. So terraced it off, and it was really beautiful.
That must have been beautiful. Anyone have any
All
photographs?
kinds of.
Yeah. Then look in your garage for pictures now.
No, I know I don't have any pictures.
I didn't know. Read it.
I went there one time. My name is Jackie Ellis Drake. I was married to Vic Ellis for 37 years, passed away in 93, and I started working at the Night Tribune in 1966 and stayed there until 1992, and then went on to other things. I loved my work at the Tribune. It was a great place to work. We had lots of fun and lots of work. And then I married Bill Drake when his wife passed away, and we've been married for 9 years. And we live in Lindemar in the Pacifica Gardens. We love it. Little house. We miss our big view. Used to be up on Barcelona. Gave that up for the stairs. And just taking day at a time now.
Of the Pacifica family, I'm currently Charlotte Heiser. I was although I had lived here since 1941, I was a newlywed in 1957. And as Nick Gust stated, I also did not support incorporation, but it happened, and I love living here.
My name is Gary Heiser, and I came here in March of '55, and I got married in Little Brown Church on June 15th of 1957. We'll be married 50 years this year. And I was a member of the Army base on top of the hill. I was one of the original Nike men up there.
I'm Elaine Rush, and we moved in Pacific Manor in 1957 for a short length of time, and then we left and we came back and lived here ever since. So we're in Sharp Park. And things have certainly changed. They built up. In fact, I went to look for the old house, and it was hard to find because there's so many built around it. When we were there, it was just 2 houses on the block. So we still enjoy it, like Pacifica. Thank you.
No matter where I go in this room, George Mason's eyes follow me all over the room. I'm going to put a cloth over that picture someday. Can't beat it. It's been fun.
57, I really don't remember much. No, about all I can say in 1957 is most of the back of the valley was dirt. There were no houses. I don't even remember exactly where the line was, but there was nothing back by Terra Nova at all. That was all much later. But we used to ride our bikes back to where Terra Nova is now. We used to camp where the library, Sanchez Library branches, the Cub Scouts used to camp back there. So it was a lot of fun, but it was a long time ago. I was very, very young. So that's about all I can say.
My name is Eileen Keogh. We moved to Lindemar in 1954. Been in the same house ever since, raised 6 children there. My fondest memories of Pacifica, I think, is working for incorporation and meeting all these wonderful people building new schools and helping to fill them up. And those are my fondest memories of Pacifica, I think. But I still love it. I wouldn't move for anything.
Okay, look at him that takes this.
I'm Fred Howard, former mayor of City of Pacifica. My favorite spot is the beaches. I used to come down here. I would never swim in them because I taught swimming for a long time. But my favorite was to bring my girlfriend, my wife now, down here for a barbecue at the beach in Pacifica from Daly City.
You hear what he said? We were hoping that. He said he's surprised to see me here. He says I could have dropped dead. Too hungry, huh?
Have you never changed? But you're always looking. Have you never changed?
Oh, God. Keep saying that. Put that on tape. I haven't changed in 50 years. That's right. Let's put that on tape. I want a copy of that. Say it again, please. All right. How you been? Fine, thank you. Very, very good. Health has been fine. Good. Still working. Yeah. Me too. Coming on with our 80th anniversary. This July already. And my 60th anniversary of my marriage this year. I'm 54. Something? Next week. Next week. Congratulations. I know you won't. No, congratulate her putting up with me.
Worked on an incorporation.
What's your favorite memory here at Pacifica?
Oh, that we found it. That we found Pacifica and built a house on top of the hill in Sharp Park.
The Little Brown Church. The Little Brown Church is, it's our favorite. It's the only church I get teary-eyed when I think about it. But I started to the Little Brown Church when I was in high school. And they had another minister there. And then they brought in Reverend Harkins. And so we liked Reverend Harkins. And I guess he came in about 1942, in that era, around then. And he had 3 daughters and a son. And he made church really interesting. And we'd go to church I couldn't always get there on Sundays because I had to walk from Edgemar down. And but Sunday evenings I managed to get down there. And then the boys, some of the guys would be going around, driving around outside afterwards. Then we'd come outside of the evening service and they'd usually give us a ride back up home to Edgemar or wherever we lived. And we ended up that my husband and I were baptized there, and our daughters were baptized there by Reverend Harkins. He was a man unto himself. He would take care of people of any faith, and he conducted services for some people of a different faith, and they thought so much of him they bought something for the church. And he was always there. And I always thought that Reverend Harkins would be there to take care of any funeral service we may have in our family, myself included. Never thought he'd get old, and he got old, and he passed away. And it was hard to believe that, he would go before the rest of us, but he did. In later years, after the war, my husband was on the trustee for the church. Somebody came by and they wanted to buy the Little Brown Church, and they wanted to move it across the highway, and they wanted to make a roller skating rink. Well, in those days, a lot of things were discussed, but nothing came through, and those on the board realized that the chances of this roller skating rink coming in was too far-fetched. And anyway, they didn't want the Little Brown Church to be changed, be moved or anything. So my husband and Jerry Brandt, and I'm sure Mrs. Anderson, Bertha Anderson was part of it, and others, they said no, they weren't going to have the Little Brown Church sold. They were going to keep it right there, and they did keep it right there. And that Little Brown Church, I think, went on to become part of the city offices or the police department, and then the school, or the city hall now, the school that's so many went to school with. And the Masons met there, and the Eastern Star met there. My daughter was in Rainbows, and they met there. All became part of the City Hall, and turned into the City Hall. And the Little Brown Church, we used to have bazaars. They always have these bazaars. And Grace McCarthy, whom everybody knows in Pacifica, no matter how long you've lived there, was the one who got the bazaars going. And she and her mother, and they'd raise money for the church there. Grace McCarthy was also the one that got us into the Girl Scouts and the PTA. We were trained by Grace McCarthy. And she was the forerunner after the war for all these things that happened down there. And we give her credit for it. And I know our husbands, if Grace asked them to volunteer for something, they would. And they were right there for her. And she did a lot to help Pacifica out. We used to go to like barbecue and picnics at Rich's Pavilion. And they had dances, and they had a band there, and a couple of the local fellows were in the band, and his family lived there for a long time. And I think the fire department would put on some of these picnic and dances, and we had once or twice the fire department put it on, and it was around the 4th of July, and lo and behold, there was a fire on one of the hills. So all the firemen would leave, go put out the fire, they'd get it out right away, they'd come back, and we'd continue partying. And they were dances and the barbecues for the families. It was all, you know, your mother and dad, the kids. I mean, people danced a lot then. And I think we roller skated in there once or twice. I don't know that we should have. Somebody had roller skates. I remember them roller skating in there. It was located in midway back in Valleymar, I think before the Y or right about the Y. And that's where the Pendolas had a farm where they grew Easter lilies. What I thought were Easter lilies was different. They grew calla lilies there that they called Easter lilies. That's Nick Gus's wife's family. They were farmers back in there.
Do you remember the Comerford estate, the Fahey estate out?
Oh yes, that's the one I wanted to tell you, Doc. The Fahey estate was there when we moved to Edgemar, and this big house. And if you think about it now, it would remind you of that one with Anthony Hopkins and Janet Leigh. Only it really wasn't like that, but I think back now, you know, in my thoughts it could have been. And there, next to the Fahey estate was a chicken farm. And the chicken farm was made of doors. They were all doors, all different doors formed the building for the chickens. And then they had the chickens out in there, all fenced in there. And that's where I learned to pluck a chicken. I didn't know until after I got married and moved to Sharp Park. A friend of mine, Jeannie Rentmeester, was from a farm, and she said, let's go get some chickens. So we went there and bought chickens on foot. But I guess they took care of them, and then we got them, and then we brought them home and plucked them. And that's where I learned to pluck chickens. And that was there for several years after the war. But I think we used to buy eggs there, too. We bought eggs there. And but what stands out is it was made up of old doors, and that formed the chicken coop. And then when they started improving on things around there, and then that was taken down. My husband and I were the first two people to get golf cards for Pacifica to be able to play golf there at a reasonable fee. We were number 1 and number 2. We just happened, and we got the cards. We had to go into the office in Golden Gate Park. It was the McCarran Lodge. Yeah, we went in there and we got our cards, and we were the first two to get cards to play golf there at a discount rate.
Cool.
Yeah, that's where we learned.
Remember when the movie theater opened? Was that?
Oh yes, we thought we died and went to heaven. We had a movie theater. And we took our children to the show, early ages, and they knew how to behave in a movie. And we'd go as a family, always went as a family. And because we used to have to go to San Bruno, Staley City, the Excelsior District, or Ocean Avenue to go to the movies. And the Seaview was such a nice theater. And I don't know that they had a movie every night or if it was just on weekends. I can't remember. But I know we were very pleased about that. And then also we had our first bakery in Pacific Manor, real bakery. I think her name was, I can't remember, Black. But we had a bakery. It was in Pacific Manor, sort of across the street from the Seaview.
Massetti's?
No, before Massetti's. Before Massetti's. And Alma. There was somebody, I think her name was Alma. And I think she ran the bakery. But we had this bakery there, and it was so nice to have a nice bakery. We didn't have to go into Tacoma. You could order a cake. Oh, and then the Skullcracker. There was a place called, it was a restaurant called the Skullcracker, and it was at the end of Santa Maria or Paloma or Salada. Paloma, okay. And I had a friend who lived there, and it had rooms there, and it was a restaurant, but it was all closed up. And the Coast Guard had part of their barracks by it. But they lived there, and I used to like to go and stay there because we could stay in one of the rooms. I'd spend the night with her. And then the ocean just kept coming in. There was a full 2-lane street out in front, you know, and the ocean just kept coming in and eroding it. And I guess that finally it just went in there and they had to take it down.
They just took it down?
Yeah, the Skullcracker. I don't know how it got the name, and but it was there. Shelter Cove, you had to go down this little road, and they had these beach houses there. And then they, at the top of the hill, there was a firehouse, and they used to have dances there. And there was the Blooms had a store and a post office right near there. But Shelter Cove was down in here, and they were up there. It was right out of Pedro Point, right? Yeah. And I think they used to take boats out there, fishing boats out there, because the Guerreros, one of my daughter's girlfriends, her father, Joe Guerrero, he was manager of the Bank of America in Pacific Manor for a while. He and a friend went out in a boat, and they didn't come back, and they were out overnight. And I think they went out of Shelter Cove. And there was just local fishermen would go out of there. I don't know if they bootlegged there in the war, in the Depression or not. There was some bootlegging that went on, and they'd bring them in. Yeah, yeah. Well, they used to have at Nick's, the restaurant, when the dad owned it, they used to have the slot machines in the back. And you'd go through a door. I mean, the door looked like a wall. And you'd go through there, and they had a Sheriff McGrath of San Mateo, and there were a lot of slot machines in San Mateo, and this was one of them. They had slot machines there, and Cachapalli's across the street. I don't know, it was called the Breakers. I don't know if they had slot machines there or not, but there's one other place around that had slot. Wander Inn, a couple of slot machines, but I know they had them, yeah. We didn't go to the beach too much because my parents, before the war and during the war, up in Edgemar there was they had a place called Jonesburger. It was one of the first hamburger places. But behind Jonesburger was all sand dunes. And these sand dunes were on a cliff. And it was harder to get down there. In Sharp Park we could get there, but there had been a log one time that had been brought in by a wave and rolled over 2 people who were on the beach. And there's a terrific undertow. And my parents were very emphatic. They gave me swimming lessons. I learned to swim in fly shacker, pull, and sutros and everything. But they wouldn't let me go in the ocean because of the tide and the undercurrents there. And probably very good because people have been lost there. I remember I think we voted on a name, or we voted on to create the city, and we decided yes, we voted to become a city. And there was a man, and I don't know how he came about. I can't remember his name now, and he's the one who named it Pacifica. And then they had the dedication for the city of Pacifica. Our house, 151 Santa Maria Avenue, was right across the street from the City Hall. And we came and we put some chairs up outside, and we had some speeches there, and we had this ringside seat, and we had friends we didn't know we had who wanted to come by and be part of it. And we saw the City Hall dedicated, and we were really pleased because they, if I remember correctly, they painted the City Hall, and it looked very good. And I'm not sure if they used some city offices in the old water office order. They had water offices up in Pacific Manor, if they operated from there or not for a while. And we were pleased that the City Hall was across the street. And there were parades. I remember there were parades. And then we saw a lot of activities. Oh, and then they were having one night at City Hall, they were having a meeting about a leash law for dogs. We happen to have a beagle dog, and beagle dogs like to get out when they can. And our dog happened to get out that night, and he went into City Hall. He sort of made the law for required leashes on dogs. He sort of helped pass the law, but he walked right into the City Hall just like he knew what he was doing.
Come on, Wayne. He's crippled up.
And that's our show, a pictorial reflection and scrapbook of early life in Pacifica. The early scenes tonight were shot at the reunion of City Hall officials and other longtime residents, taken at the beginning of Pacifica's 50th anniversary celebration. If you would like to have a copy of this video, please contact the Pacifica Historical Society. They're at P.O. Box 752 or website www.pacificahistory.org. And remember, lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime. And departing, leave behind us footprints in the sands of time.